Canadian cartoons. For years, I've had to witness their downfall on this website. Video after video about the worst Canadian cartoons, the weirdest Canadian cartoons, and I'm here to put an end to this. Are there weird Canadian cartoons? Yeah, Almost Naked Animals, Super Monkeys, and The Day My Butt Went Psycho, but there's also good ones, and I'm tired of the disrespect. There's also been a noticeable decrease in original Canadian cartoons in recent years, so to bring back harmony to our nation, here's the top 10 best Canadian cartoons. These aren't actually the best cartoons, nor are all of them like that amazing. My goal here is to recommend shows within categories that would satisfy literally anybody, but that's too long of a video title.
Lights, camera, action, begin!
Running from 2005 to 2008, we have Being Ian. It's a slice of life focused on a boy with a hyperactive imagination named Ian and his family. This show is fun. It follows Ian usually getting into some problem and having to solve it. The subplots involve his family, who are all way more interesting than Ian is. His brothers are literally Ian and Anthony from Smosh, both in personality and looks.
I get the good controller. Called it.
Called it's don't count. Called it. Hey Ian, why are you so interested in our family photos all of a sudden?
Yeah. You wondering if you're adopted again?
It has interesting segments showing Ian's imagination that reference movies and play with the visuals of the show. Something I like about the normal style is the cartooniness. I love when cartoons embrace that they're cartoons. This show has so many nonsensical visual gags after one another and rubbery arms that flop around. However, I do hate the boobs in this show. Perfectly round, spherical boobs are something I don't embrace in cartoons. Also, out of all the shows, it's the most outwardly Canadian. Canadian media is usually obnoxiously Canadian in a way only other Canadians realize.
We're from Canada, and
Canada, huh? Why aren't you speaking French?
A buddy of mine lives in Canada. Do you know Phil Jasperson?
No, I don't think so.
Well, there's your problem. Just as I planned. The heat from your Earth vehicle engine has kept my nutriment at an optimum temperature.
They name drop actual places or people from Canada, and Being Ian does all that, especially with the millions of Canadian flags in this show, the fact that they love hockey, and Ian goes to Celine Dion High School.
Take a good look, Ian Kelly, for this is your future.
Running from 2003 to 2006, Jacob Tutu is a slice of life focusing on a boy with a hyperactive imagination named Jacob and his family. Despite sounding like Being Ian on the surface, it's actually the complete opposite of it. Why is Jacob called Jacob Tutu? Because he has to say everything twice to be noticed, which is kind of sad. It's a lot less loud and in your face than Being Ian, with Jacob usually changing in some way or learning a lesson at the end. Firstly, the show has a great style. I'm impressed at all of these character designs because I've met people who look exactly like all these characters throughout my Canadian years. And on top of the characters, the backgrounds are amazing. They're sketchy with loose coloring that resembles markers on paper. It's also amazing how dense they are. There's so much going on and so much detail in one shot. While in Being Ian, a lot of the crazy stuff that happens to him is in his imagination. The stuff that happens in Jacob Tutu is just real. There is no sense of reality in this show. Jacob can become friends with ghosts one day. He can go into the teacher's lounge and find a secret cave another day, and he can also have a neighbor who's a spy. 'Cause why not? Each episode's pretty fun and chill. It moves at a slower pace, and it's not so in your face and out there, but it's still interesting. I think one of the best parts is probably Jacob because he's so likable, which also leads to my one problem, which is that everybody's really mean in this show. All of Jacob's siblings are mean to him most of the time. He He comes to school and then gets bullied by older kids, and his teacher, and his principal, and his janitor. He's only like 10 years old. This boy cannot catch a break.
What is that on your shirt?
It's my first date. I didn't know.
No excuses and no exceptions. That t-shirt is against the rules. Hand it over.
I remember this show being hard to watch as a kid because it triggered such deep anxiety within me, so fair warning.
Do you ever get teased with a name like that? You might want to consider using your middle name. My full name on my birth certificate is Buford Orville Gaylord Pugh. Maybe Buford is your best bet.
On a tiny little island in the ocean called Pacific, there's a mixed up group of creatures who are really quite horrific. Stitched together with whatever crap was found or could be grabbed, reinvented in the bowels of a lab.
Airing from 2009-2010, Splice is a modern take of H.G. Wells' The Island of Dr. Moreau. It's a story about a scientist living on an island filled with human-like hybrid beings he made from animals via vivisection. So clearly a perfect premise for a kids show. In this show, they're mutants from genetic experiments made by recombining DNA instead of being cut up and joined. The scientists who made them get locked up and they're isolated on the island making society. Despite having so much lore, literally none of it matters. They don't really know much about the scientist and sometimes he's referenced and that's really it. They have like interesting horror scenes when they bring him up and some interesting imagery because all that matters is that they're weird looking animals on a goofy little island because this show is just goofy. It's silly and wacky and just plain dumb, which is really just what you need sometimes. It focuses on all the mutants on this island, but mostly Perry and Entree, who are the dumbest. It's fast-paced with gag after gag, a lot of slapstick, and overall just goofy. I think it's better to just describe an episode to you for this show. The first episode starts off with Perry trying to find out what he's good at, and he keeps failing until he finds a bowling alley, and he learns he's good at bowling. But then he uses it to try to do all the other talents that he was bad at, and he ends up giving up on bowling because it doesn't end up working out. But then aliens come to the island who coincidentally look like bowling pins, and Perry of course defeats them using his bowling skills. And the episode ends with them getting attacked by peanut butter and jam sandwiches that Perry made at the very beginning of the episode. They do all of that in just 11 minutes.
Hi, Two Legs Joe. Did you know that Perry's the best house painter on Keepaway Island?
Really? I had no idea.
Me neither.
Airing from 2009 to 2012, The League of Super Evil focuses on a group of wannabe supervillains. They come up with ridiculous plans that never work and get into trouble while trying to be evil. Unexpectedly, this show is pretty fun. There's a lot of physical comedy, but a lot of the comedy is in its absurdity. It's wacky and over the top as it should be. The leader, Voltar, always comes up with poorly planned evil acts, and he has this white piece on his suit that moves whenever he speaks like a mustache. That begs the question, is it a mustache? Is that his mouth? Or is it a piece of his suit? This show does have a big flaw, which is that it's kind of ugly. It has a dull color palette and some ugly designs for the side characters, although the main characters look fine.
Express lane!
We have more than 12 items!
But sometimes it looks like cutscenes from a PS2 game. I think this is a good time to mention how there's always been a lot of CG Canadian cartoons, because Canada dipped its feet early on with the first ever CG show Reboot in 1994. Cool concept and designs in theory, because honestly, the show is terrifying. But since that, there's been a lot of CG Canadian cartoons, and it's interesting seeing the evolution of this medium before it got so largely used for TV. AKA reliving all the ugly CG cartoons we were lab rats to in Canada.
You didn't get the real molds for this game, did you?
Frog! I am insulted! Anyone can hit a blind rodent.
Phew.
Welcome to Miseryville.
The last one, airing from 2009-2011, Jimmy Two Shoes, is about a happy boy named Jimmy who lives in Miseryville, a town filled with monsters and demon-like creatures that are literally in hell, but they are not allowed to say it. This show is zany and fun. I've said a lot of the same stuff for all these shows, but I swear you guys, all of them are different. It's the same hijinks, goofy, slapstick comedy. I would say compared to the others, the real draw is the characters of this one. It has a big main cast and reoccurring that you see constantly, and each character is a lot of fun individually and with all the dynamics that they share with one another. And once again, I swear all these shows are different and levels of funny. I swear they're not all the same. I'm trying my best.
Zilcho right now, take one!
From 2006 to 2018, Galaxy is about Yoko, Josh, and Brett who attend Galaxy High, where they learn to become space marshals and balance high school life. This show is made by the same company as Totally Spies and Martian Mystery, but I'd say it's better than both. Listen, I know they give everyone a nostalgia boner, but they aren't on the pedestal people always put them on. The repetitiveness in both shows is crazy. Even as a kid, it was hard to watch both of these shows like one after the other. You knew what was gonna happen. It was so planned and sequenced. Martian Mystery has the added caveat that there's way too many chibi, quirky anime moments that just distract you from the moment. Totally Spies, which came later, was better because they would mix the main plot better with the B plots, but the B plots with the girls reached a drag. How many times do we have to watch another episode about them fighting over a boy? There's over 100 episodes of this show. Why is it getting a reboot? Let them rest. Team Galaxy remedies this while also using their good aspects. It's a similar Monster of the Week with subplots in between, but it's less predictable and less repetitive. They've got interesting villains and cool concepts. The palette for the show is great. It's so saturated and the alien designs are so cool. It's also cool seeing like the world that they live in when they go and travel to all the different planets. And I mean, the premise alone sets them up for so many interesting episodes. The one thing I'd say it lacks is characters. The characters aren't as likable as the other show, nor are their dynamics that interesting. That doesn't mean that they're bad, they're just kind of lackluster. Still, if you're into its predecessors, you'll be into this one, which is interesting because not a lot of people remember this show. Canadian channels usually push for Canadian shows because we don't have many, so when they invest in them, they will be showing them. And this came from the same company who made two incredibly popular shows, with Cartoon Network literally paying 16 to 17 million for this show alone, but they just never aired this show. If they aired it at a prime time like Martian Mystery and Totally Spies, then it doesn't matter if kids didn't like it or not because they would at least remember it. I did some field research, aka asking people who were 10 to 13 years old around the original run of all of these shows, and none of them could recall anything from Team Galaxy. My brother summed it up best by saying, "Oh yeah, that's Martian Mystery. I remember that airing all the time." What is that? I was really young when these aired, and I know about Team Galaxy not because I actively watched it either, but because I actively tried to watch it. The reruns were once a day at 2 p.m. on Tuesdays right before I'd come home from school. I had seen the ending of episodes when I'd come a little early, so I would race back home to watch it. But Martian Mystery, which was even older than this, I watched that show all the time because reruns went on for years, and it was in a good slot where kids were actually watching TV. So, why is that? Why did they nerf this show so hard? I don't know. I have no idea why this barely aired. I'm thinking maybe it wasn't as popular right away as they hoped for it to be. Martian Mystery had just ended with constant reruns, and Totally Spies was still ongoing, so maybe kids just got brain rot from all these shows, feeling that they were more or less the same. Or maybe they had internal issues because it was co-produced by so many different international companies. Things might not have worked out between them. I think the worst part really is that this series ends with 3 episodes that set up an ongoing plot but they never got another season, so they never continued past that, which is a real bummer because it had a lot of potential and nobody even remembers it.
There's one other thing. My family is really important to me. Would you like to meet them? Like, now?
So, you want to date my daughter?
Hands off my sis,
You look
dude.
like such a nice boy.
We're the Stormhawks. And for us, the sky is never the limit.
Airing from 2007 to 2009, Space Hawks takes place in Atmos, a world made of floating land masses. They're protected by Sky Knights, and I'll just let the opening tell you the rest.
Greatest of all Sky Knights led the Stormhawks. His mission? Unite the kingdoms and rid Atmos of evil forever. But he was betrayed. The Stormhawks defeated, and all hope lost. Until now. I'm Arrow, the last descendant of the original Stormhawks, and I've been given their mission. This is my squadron. Finn, the marksman. Junko, the strongman.
Sorry.
Piper, the specialist.
Let's do it!
Stork, the helmsman. We're doomed. And of course my co-pilot, Radar.
A new Master Cyclonide comes around and the newly appointed Stormhawks try to work to defeat her. Each episode takes place with the Stormhawks traveling to a new land and getting into some sort of trouble. Despite the lore, this show is not heavily focused on story arcs or character arcs, but that does not make the show bad. The plots in each episode are interesting, the characters are all likable and really enjoyable to see together. It's funny, coupled with cool world building and concepts. The action scenes are really great, with them taking place fully in the sky through their devices, but they also have like physical hand-to-hand combat. And we all know there's only like 5 good action cartoons, so unfortunately this show was also done dirty. The show barely aired on TV, being from YTV, the Canadian version of Nickelodeon, which by the way is the same channel as Team Galaxy. I originally thought this show was from like the early 2000s because the only time it aired was after 10 p.m. on weekdays when all the other older shows did, but that was after season 2 had already aired. I looked at the old Stormhawks website and they posted about season 2 beginning to air, and they mentioned that it was airing on YTV every Saturday morning, which is a great slot, but the rest of the episodes and reruns would air at 7 a.m. on weekdays. That is one of the worst times ever for this show to air. So this is just to support my statement that the network really messed this one up. I guess this was to capture an older audience, but it was on really late when you're only watching TV because there's nothing else to watch. In my case, it was when you were sneaking downstairs to watch TV when your parents were asleep. So it also unfortunately did not have a big viewer base, although it seems to have fared better in people's consciousness than Team Galaxy did. And unfortunately, again, I can't really give a reason why it didn't get like a prime slot or anything, or why they never really cared much for it. I love the art style and designs also. The outfits, the backgrounds, the flying motorcycle thingies, they're all so detailed. The full series is on YouTube, like everything else I talked about, by the way. But it has an HD remaster, which I'm so grateful for, because I cannot explain to you what it was like watching this on TV in standard definition, where everything was just like a blur. As you can see, it's made by the same company as League of Super Evil, and you'll notice a lot of these show companies overlap because there's only like 3 places that produce shows in Canada, which respect for the range they have.
Doom, doom, suffering and gloom. Does your music have to be so depressing?
Yes.
Most of what I review is girly, slice of life / magic shows, so this one's for you girls. Atomic Betty, airing from 2004 to 2008. It's about a normal girl named Betty who's also secretly the leader of a group of space cops called the Galactic Guardians. It's the same crisis of the week thing and like the rest of these cartoons, But this show's really good. It's in this category instead of the fun time shows because it's not all just being goofy. It could literally get its own video just to explain all its good stuff. The characters are great with one another and really likable, especially the main trio. X5 is literally one of my favorite cartoon characters ever.
Utilizing the incredible vast resources in my hard drive, which might I add, come from my many years in the field, I have assembled your cat kit. Problematic.
The show also has great villains and it makes full use of its sci-fi concepts with simple lore throughout, like Betty's grandma's past life as a galactic guardian, their commander just being a goldfish with a southern twin brother who lives in the ocean. If you wanted something more from the fun time category, I recommend this one. And it has such a good theme song.
I've been thinking about what Dr. C said. I accept your offer. As a robot, I want to join you.
Yes! Victorious! I knew I was right.
I never thought that would happen.
I don't believe it is happening.
Come on, he's a floating brain in a jar. He's got to be right.
I think the best way to end this is with the newest show on the list, right after the oldest. Airing in 2018 on Netflix, we have The Hollow. It's a show about 3 teens who wake up in a bunker with no memory of where they are, who they are, or what they're doing. The show has 2 seasons with 10 episodes each, and it's pretty good. I honestly can't explain much without spoiling it, but I went to this without caring for it at all, and by the end, I was hyped for the 2nd season to come out. It's the only show on this list that's truly episodic, and it does have not the best pacing because the beginning's a little bit slow, but it definitely picks up. The story isn't too interesting once you figure out what's happening to them, but by that point, the characters pull you in and you're rooting for them. It's also unpredictable with a lot of surprises, and you really don't know what will happen next. It's a quick and nice watch with some cool character designs and pretty great world building. Despite being limited, it's really stylized and it reminds me a lot about 3 Delivery. And I'm allowed to mention 3 Delivery because that's a US-Canadian joint project. If you want something short and interesting with a good amount of action, I'd recommend it. But be warned, The Hollow is the only show without a theme song on this list, so it gets negative points for that.
What's mightier than steel, yet cowers from the sun?
The old man said we'd find the Ishibo once we solve his riddle.
Do you have any idea what he meant? Hey! What are you doing?
You are not worthy!
So that's it. Kind of. I actually have a lot more to add, but I'll hold off for another video when I'm out of video ideas. Canadian animation is dead. A couple years back, Disney ended their contract with the Canadian version of Disney called Family Channel to open Disney Channel in Canada, and this was the beginning of the end for Canadian animation, I'd say. Family was literally just Disney shows with some original Canadian shows trying to be Disney Channel shows, so this contract ending meant Family had to scramble for shows. They had a weird era of airing British shows from 2010s and like 90s sitcoms from America, but then they started their comeback with a lot of original live action teen shows. They started making more of these, which got really popular, so YTV did the same. So then they started investing a lot of money into live action shows compared to animated shows. And then we get to today where there's not a lot of original Canadian cartoons anymore at all. And to be honest, we never had a lot of Canadian animated original shows to begin with. I think you might have noticed that there's not a lot of overlap in starting years for these shows for a reason. There's also streaming choking out all these cable channels, so I doubt their focus is on funding original animated shows, which would cost a lot of money and be hit or miss compared to live action shows that are already seen as more profitable. To top it off, our Cartoon Network Teletoon died this year and became Cartoon Network Canada, obviously. Teletoon was actually where most original Canadian animation aired, including all the bad ones people talk about, which are kind of bad on purpose. Canadian shows earn funding from the government, so a lot of Canadian cartoons are just fillers. They're made to fill the space when no one's watching instead of paying for the rights for a foreign show to fill that time. That's why a lot of these bad Canadian cartoons people talk about are so similar. They have like an off-the-walls concept. They're really short in length, they don't have a lot of episodes, and it's the same idea of a little boy getting in trouble. They're more profitable in the sense that the network gets money from the government, and all they have to do is lazily and quickly make a show to fill time when nobody's going to be watching TV anyways. Now, I'm just a loyal cartoon watcher, so this is my personal hypothesis. So if anybody else watching knows better, please feel free to school me. But I want to say that the problem is not Canada, it's capitalism.
I'm so happy, 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 happy.
Your turn.
Coming back to Teletoon, what set it apart really was its Canadian programming. I remember when Teletoon's Can't Miss Thursdays block first started, they only aired Canadian shows during it, including Mud Pit, Garage Band, and Detention Era. Later on that changed, and it became mixed with American shows, and then a couple years later, the only Canadian show on the roster was Detention Era, before the block finally ended for good. I call that heavy foreshadowing. Especially because my next video is on Detention Era, review coming soon.